Hello everybody, my name is Chef Stanley Townsend. Welcome to an edition of Cook It Simple. Today we're going to cook it simple, we're going to keep it simple, we're going to learn some tips and some tricks on how to stretch that food dollar. Today's episode we're going to talk about comfort foods. As the seasons change, we find ourselves spending more time inside. So we can take a little bit of time to cook some nice hot comfort foods. Some of the dishes I'm cooking are slightly retro, but they're all good, they're cheap, they're nutritious. Well, let's get cooking. And I thought today we would prepare a dish that's been around for years and years. It comes and it goes. It's a real favorite. It's really pleasing, it's really hearty, and it's really filling. And we're talking about French onion soup. And you don't need a lot of ingredients to make French onion soup, but you need a little bit of time, and you used to have to use a little bit of cooking tricks. So first of all, I've started out with about 4 pounds of sliced onions. So usually you can buy about a 3-pound bag of onions. Today, probably the most economical onion to use are the yellow onions, and I've sliced them up, and my rule of thumb is that when I'm cutting up the onions, I don't want them to be any bigger than my thumb. And that's because when we start eating the soup, it'll fit perfectly onto a spoon. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take these onions, about 4 pounds of these onions. Look at that, it's a lot of onions. We're going to saute them down. We're going to add a little bit of salt, and we're going to add a little bit of pepper. If you like, you could put a little bit of thyme in there. We're going to saute them all around, and like I say, it requires a little bit of cooking technology. So we're going to put those onions onto the back burner, covered, and we're going to leave them there for 1 hour. Now, after 1 hour, we're going to take the lid off, and you can see that that amount of onions have gone down to that point. So we're going to stir those onions around, and we've actually cooked them down, and you can see how they've changed color. They're a rich brown now. Is what happens is the onions have caramelized. It's brought out all the sugars in the onions. It's really concentrated the flavor. So we'll stir that around there. When you're sauteing the onions, you could put in a little garlic. That's optional. Now the second thing we're going to do with this is we're going to add some nice hot beef stock. Now beef stock, of course, you can buy the packaged beef stock, you can make your own, or you can go as simple as using a bouillon cube dissolved would work fine. A few flavoring components that we could add to the onion soup if we want to bring out the flavor a little bit. Right at the end, you can put in about a tablespoon of brown sugar. That'll sweeten it up. And you can also put in, not that you'll find this in your food bank, put in a little sherry or put in a little red wine will also bring some flavor. But today, I'm going to make it the children-friendly version. And we're going to add about 1 liter of water to that. And we're going to put the lid on that. And we're going to crank it up and let it simmer for approximately an hour or so. Now, how are we going to serve this food? Well, I've got what are called French onion bowls. Now, these French onion bowls you can find them in the dollar discount store. You can find them there. They cost about $1.50. Very, very cute, very interesting. It adds another dimension to the dining experience because we're going to bake this a little later on. So we're going to put these croutons on the top of this onion soup, and then we're going to put some grated cheese. The grated cheese, what kind of cheese are you going to use? You can either use grated Swiss, mozzarella, Parmesan. You could even use grated cheddar. And then what we're going to do is put it under the broiler, and we're going to bake it, and we call that process au gratin. So au gratin means to brown, and usually you do it with either breadcrumbs, or cheese. So we'll let that simmer, and we'll be back in a minute, and we'll dish up the soup. All right, right, our soup has been simmering, gently simmering for a good hour. This is a wonderful soup to make on a Saturday afternoon or Sunday. Just put the soup on, let it cook. The longer it cooks, the more the flavor is going to be established. So we've got the soup is cooked down, looks fairly oniony, nice dark brown. I've got a little bit of thyme in there. We're going to try to avoid that thyme. Going to get a nice ladle full of the soup, put it in. Going to leave a little bit of room on the top for the soup. Yeah, I know. I make my French onion soup out of a package. Well, that might be good for making meatloaf and other ingredients, but once you see how easy it is to make a original, authentic French onion soup, you're going to enjoy it. So I've got a couple of croutons. You know, I use a lot of bread because years ago a chef told me, hey, if they're hungry, fill them up with bread. So we're going to put that crouton. I've just taken a few slices of baguette or French bread. I buttered them with a little garlic butter. Just make your own garlic butter. And I'm going to put those two croutons on the top of my soup. And then what we're going to do fairly quickly is we're just going to cover that with some cheese. Now, I know cheese might be a little dear, but when you're going to try to stretch your food dollar, you'll find that you can really, instead of buying meat, if you use ingredients like lentils, beans, and cheese, you'll find you get all the protein. A little bit of cheese goes a long ways. And then we're just going to slip that into the underneath the broiler. You're going to say, wait, I don't have a broiler. Pretty well all electric stoves have a broiler. Look on your oven. There's usually a broiler unit on the top. Just slide it, bring the top rack up to about 6 inches from the top. Slide it under and there, bake that. We'll be back in a minute after we bake the soup. All right, we pulled the soup out from underneath the broiler. It's nice and bubbly, brown on top. It looks absolutely delicious. This is a meal to itself. What I'd suggest, this is a great meal for a Saturday afternoon or a Sunday. Serve a nice hot piping bowl of French onion soup and maybe a nice little tossed green salad on the side, and there you've got a beautiful, beautiful lunch. So something old, something new, French soup au gratin, easy to make and very easy on the pocketbook. French onion soup au gratin, enjoy. Well, it's certainly a pleasure to welcome Thomas and Ben's Night to the beautiful Nate Kitchens. We're down here today. We're going to cook up a storm. We're going to cook it simple. We're going to keep it simple. We're going to use some of the common ingredients that are found in an Edmonton food banker. And also you're going to augment some of those recipes with ingredients from your own personal larder. But incidentally, Thomason, I noticed that the last time I went down to the food bank, the kitchen cupboard is getting bare, and that's pretty scary for a chef like me who likes access to lots of food to cook with. But what about our clients?
Well, definitely Edmonton's Food Bank sees the ebb and flow of clients needing our help. And that's everyone from that are refugees, evacuees, people in need. It's a whole conglomerate in Edmonton that needs our help. And of course, right now with the economic downturn, it is difficult for many Edmontonians. So learning how to cook on a budget, keeping it simple, because there's many people like me that are not comfortable in a kitchen. So learning some simple recipes that make us look like chefs like you. It's good in and of itself, right? If we're able to get people learning how to prepare their food properly in their own home, learning hygiene, safe cooking, how to cut, how to dice, how to measure, and how to cook it simple is perfect for everyone.
Well, I really appreciate those kind comments. But that's what the program is all about. We try to focus those recipes, try to keep it simple. For a family, I invite you to get the family all involved with us. And most importantly, we're going to make good food that tastes good, and we're going to have fun doing it.
Wonderful.
Cold winter day, want to make a one-pot wonder, want to make something that is easy on the pocketbook, very, very nutritious, very tasty, gets taste even better as it goes along. We're going to make a vegetarian chili con carne. Now, I have to apologize to any of my Spanish-speaking friends because I know that chili con carne means chilies with meat. We're not using any meat in this as a vegetarian, so we're going to call it chili sin carne, which means chilies without meat. First of all, start out with a nice, beautiful melange of diced vegetables, onions, peppers, red peppers, green peppers. If you don't have the green peppers, you only have the onions, just go with the onions because we're going to add our own version. Some nice spice in it are these beautiful red chili flakes. We're going to add some chili pepper to it. It's like the first snowfall. Now, I can always add a little more. We're going to add a little of our freshly ground. This is really a spice that really brings authenticity to anything Latin or Mexican. It's some ground cumin. And also, just for good luck, and you can see I'm crushing this up, we're going to put in some oregano. So, we're going to saute that all up. Looks like it's doing pretty good. The idea of cooking those spices at the beginning is to allow them to really develop their flavors. There's no meat in this dish, but what I always use as a meat substitute are mushrooms. So I've only got about a few mushrooms go a long ways. There's about 6 mushrooms. Now, mushrooms are a very good deal. Flavor builder, replaces the meat. Lots of protein in mushrooms and lots of flavor in the mushrooms. So we're going to saute those mushrooms up. Bada bada, bada bing. Put a little more chili powder in there. I can actually smell. Some people say that when you cook, you should cook by your nose. So when you smell the roast cooking or you smell the turkey cooking, it's probably cooked. And of course, we build layers of flavor, putting in a little salt and a little bit of pepper. Saute that all up. So easy to make. You can actually make this dish in a slow cooker if you wanted to. I always like to saute up the vegetables a little bit because the vegetables and the spices, because it releases the flavor. So we look at that. You know, looks very earthy, chock full of nutrition. Now, what we have to add to it is some tomatoes. So we're going to add 1 can of tomatoes. It doesn't matter what kind of tomatoes you got. I'm using diced tomatoes in this particular case. Throw those in there. Want to build the layers of flavor. So we've actually built the flavor there. And then we're going to add a little more tomato product, which is the tomato paste. So because we don't have any meat to build the flavor, so we're going to put in a little tomato paste, which is going to concentrate the tomato flavor in there. And the last thing we're going to add to that is we're going to add our beans. Beans, wonderful source of protein. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to transfer this to the pot. So let's get it all into the big pot. Try not to spill any on the counter. I've been well trained by my wife. I don't know if any other guys experienced that, but I experience it. And I'm, of course, grateful for it because I've got a beautiful wife. There we go. Now, there are different types of beans out there. Usually what I do is I like a combination of beans. We all have the canned beans there. This is going to add a little sweetness to the dish. I like to add actually some chickpeas. I don't have the chickpeas today, but I'm going to add some kidney beans. Important that when you add these canned beans, they're very high in sodium. Very, very important to rinse them off under cold water so you don't remove some of that sodium. And of course, what would really authentic chili be without some black beans in it? You can put 3 or 4 different varieties of beans in there. And we're just going to stir that all up. We're going to add a little stock to it if you want chicken stock. I've got some vegetable stock. When I cut up the vegetables, I put all my little onion ends and carrot ends and some parsley and made a vegetable stock. Stir that all around. Take a look at it. It's cooking, cooking, cooking. And we're going to let that cook. And I'm going to make a delicious dish that we're going to serve with that, and that's called Johnny cake. So we'll be back in a second to cook the Johnny cake. All right, it looks like the chili is cooking up pretty good. Just going to let that simmer for a few more minutes. Cooking for a while. Now what we'd like to do is we'd like to make an accompaniment to the chili, and we're going to make a dish called Johnny cake, also called cornmeal cake, but I like to call it Johnny cake. We're going to start out with about 1 cup of cornmeal, and we're going to add 1 teaspoon of baking powder, a half a teaspoon of baking soda. If you don't have the baking soda, just increase the baking powder to 1.5 teaspoons. And about a half teaspoon of salt. We're going to mix that all up. Make sure that the baking soda gets well blended in there. Next thing we're going to add is 2 beaten eggs. You can see we're putting 2 beaten eggs there, and we're just going to mix that up till it's a thick paste. And then we're going to add my secret ingredient. We're going to add some vegetable oil. That's not my secret ingredient. Secret ingredient, some cream corn. 1 can of cream corn, not 1 can, 1 cup of cream corn, which is less than a can. And 1 cup of sour cream. And try to use the full fat sour cream, works best. Now what I like to do is I like to add a finely diced jalapeno pepper to that. If you don't have the jalapeno pepper, you can put in a few chili flakes. And we're just going to mix that up. Look at that. How long does that take to make? Less than 2 or 3 minutes. Again, either an 8x8 cake pan. Of course, I like to use the Pyrex dishes. And all we do is put that in there like that. Of course, when I was a kid, I always got to lick the bowl, so I'll make sure that everything gets out of there. And that's all there is to that. Very simple. We're going to bake this for about a half an hour at a fairly high heat, 400. We'll be back. So we baked off the cornbread. We've let it cool. Of course, I've cut it into some wedges. And I'm just going to take some of those wedges out. And this is going to be our accompaniment to our chili. Now let me tell you, you'll eat more than 1 piece of this because it is really good. So we're just going to ladle up some chili in there. 1 nice bowl of chili. We got 1 other nice bowl of chili. Now, if you taste the chili and you find it tastes a little bit on the acidic side, or you want to round up the flavor for it, put a little bit of sugar in there. Sugar with tomatoes will always bring out the flavor of tomatoes. So we're going to put that dish on there, that dish on there. Normally, I like to serve this with some nice grated cheddar. We don't have cheddar today, but we got some of that beautiful cheese that's left over from the French onion soup. What's also nice with any of these hot and spicy dishes is to use a little bit of sour cream. So a little spoonful of sour cream. And of course you can put a few green onions on top of there. And there you have a very lovely, please Mom, I want some more, chili con carne. Make it as hot and spicy or as mild as you want to. Play with the recipe. Not only is it vegetarian, it's a completely gluten-free dish. So I'm thinking about you viewers out there. Chili sin carne, enjoy. We are blessed to live in Edmonton because we are a very diverse city, a multicultural city. We have Vietnamese, we have large Francophone population, we have a large Indian population, large Ukrainian population. And I've tried to represent every one of those nationalities in our cooking show. Today we're going to make butter chicken. There's a bit of paradox to butter chicken because it doesn't really contain that much butter. However, you don't have butter, use margarine. You don't have margarine, use oil. Because what I do is I substitute another dairy product for the butter to add richness. So I use a little dairy cream. So we got a nice hot pan, and we're going to take a roughly about 2 pounds of chicken breast that's diced up. Now, shop around. I went to the big W store, not to mention any names, and you could buy this much chicken for $10. That's about 2.5 pounds of chicken. That's an excellent deal. So we're going to put some chicken in there. Nice hot pan. Get that chicken in there. Spread it around slowly so it's going to brown. We're not really trying to cook it off completely because we'll bring it to a boil and we'll cook it up quite a bit a little later. Once this chicken commences the cooking, we're actually going to build the flavors of the spice mixture in it. So we're going to put in, with the sauteing mixture, we're going to put in some garlic, about a tablespoon of garlic. And of course, I find it really, really easy to use these little bottles of garlic. They get a couple of bucks. I don't have to peel them. I can use as much as I want or as little as I want. And I'm also going to put in a fairly substantial amount of ginger. Now, if you're a purist and you want to use the garlic cloves or grate your own ginger, that's fine. But just for ease of service, this is one of the dishes I really like to cook that is really, really fast to cook. So the principal ingredients in this is we're going to use some curry powder. I like to use Madras curry powder. You can actually find this Madras powder in the bags. Always buy your spices in bags or in bulk. It's way cheaper than buy it in little containers. So we really want to cook out the flavor of that curry. About a tablespoon or so of that curry powder. We can always add a little bit. Second ingredient I like to add is an ingredient called garam masala. It is also an Indian spice blend, a little bit sweeter and a little less authority. So we're going to put in the garam masala. And it's very, very important that the curry gets cooked out. It's going to really develop those flavors. We're also going to put in a little bit of chili powder just to give it a little bit of kick. We're going to put in some of those chili peppers, also to give it a little authority. Good curry powder is not necessarily hot. And we're going to put in a little cumin also. I have had friends who will actually mix this dish and they'll put a little bit of peanut butter in there. But I avoid putting the peanut butter in there because there's so many people that have nut allergies. Got her all sauteed up. That's fairly quick. Gonna put some onions. Onions are always a great flavor base. Well, one of my favorite dishes, when I want to eat something, I want to eat it in a hurry, I'm hungry, is to make this butter chicken. There we go. We've cooked it up. Now we're going to add the secret ingredient. Quite often, many people make this butter chicken with a tomato product, whether it's canned tomatoes or it's tomato paste. What I'm going to use what everybody's got, is a can of tomato soup. And the tomato soup, one of the advantages of tomato soup, it's got lots of salt in it. It's got some sugar in it, which are all great. It's already pre-thickened. And watch what happens when I stir that up, because it's going to go from red to a really, really rich brown. Of course, it's quite thick now, isn't it? So what we're going to do, you have your choice. If you're really adventuresome, you could put in a can of coconut milk into there. But in this case, I'm going to put in some chicken stock, about a cup of chicken stock. And we're just going to stir that up, reduce it to a simmer. Now look at that. Doesn't that look beautiful, a nice rich brown? I'll tell you, it smells beautiful. This whole dish can be cooked in about 5 or 10 minutes. So resting assured and being brave, knowing that that chicken is cooked, I'm just going to do a little taste right now, see if it's hot enough or not hot enough for me. Woo! It's just right. It's got some bite to it. And now you know how easy it is to make butter chicken. We'll be right back, and we'll serve up the butter chicken with basmati rice. All right, we've cooked down the butter chicken. You can cook it down for about 15-20 minutes till it gets to the right viscosity. And like I said, you call it butter chicken. I cut way down on the butter, and what I do at the end, I add a dairy product, and in this particular case, the dairy product is a little bit of sour cream. You can try using yogurt with it, whatever. But I find that adding a little sour cream adds some richness, and it also tends to round off the sharp edges of the spices. So it really gives you a nice mellow feeling. So a good curry dish shouldn't really taste hot when you eat it, but it should give you that nice warm feeling as it goes down. So now we're ready. We've got the basmati rice. Then I'm going to take a nice generous scoop of the butter chicken. Wow. Impress your friends, impress your neighbors. This dish will adequately make at least 6 servings. So if you're a couple like we are, empty nesters, we will make this for dinner. We'll have it for dinner, and we'll probably have it for dinner the next night and still have chicken left over. So there we go. It looks nice and beautiful. I think the last thing we want to do is put a little optional, put a little cilantro on top of there. And what have we got? We have butter chicken. You can make it at home. You can do it. Thanks for joining us, folks. It's been a great episode. We've cooked it simple. We've kept it simple. All I can say, bon appetit. Please remember that all the recipes are posted on the Edmonton Food Bank website. You can check them out at edmontonsfoodbank.com.